take a look at your first memory of money. Just remember what it is. Your first memory of money and note how you felt about it. How did it make you feel when you remember your first memory of money? And take a look at that pattern and see if it repeats itself.
Hi, everyone. This is the Ego Project, and I am Lisa Heidle, and I'm here with my co-host,
Cristine Seidell, and together we have...
And Candis Fox.
Welcome, Candis. We're so excited to have you with us. Today, we are going to be talking about money, 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 money. I will never do that again. We're so excited. This is going to be such a rich conversation. And so we're going to do just a very quick housekeeping and jump right in because we want to get as much as we can into this conversation. And everyone listening and watching, grab a pen and paper. You're going to need it. This is, you're going to want to write some of this down. Okay. Everyone, if you could go ahead, like, subscribe for us. We are building and growing, and the more followers we have, the more engagement we have, the better the algorithm picks us up and more people can find us. And make sure to share with your friends because you all know who has the ego wounds. Okay. Now drop them a hint and send them the Ego Project.
Just a friendly hint.
Just a little nudge in that direction. Never hurts. Okay. All right, everyone. Candis, I'm going to go ahead and read your bio, and then we're going to jump right in. Okay. Candis Fox loves everything about who they are. Yes, even the weird, unpleasant parts. Candis is a career coach and diversity consultant who specializes in helping clients go from limited to limitless in their approach to money. Candis has combined her 10 plus years in cognitive science and education with her 30 plus years in unconscious transformational practices to create a breakthrough new system for transforming the way people make, spend, invest, and manage money. Okay. Truncated bio there because we have a lot to talk about.
We do.
But I think that pretty much encapsulates what so many people need to understand is money. Okay.
Yeah. I love that you
around
made a pun earlier and didn't even notice that we're going to have a really rich conversation today.
I did it. I did not, and I'm just that good.
Yeah. So good. We're in the vibe of money. Evidently, we're working with it. So, and I love your first line, and I think that is just such a beautiful way to start any bio, which is just that you love yourself and all that you are.
Thanks so much.
Yeah,
it took me a long time to get here, but here we're here.
I'm glad you are.
It's a constant practice, right? All right. So, listen, we're all thinking about New Year's resolutions. Everybody's wanting more money. There's a lot of tension in the world, and money happens to be at the center of all of it, right? So, this is a very heavy topic for a lot of people. So, you might find that as you're listening, you need to just like take a pause, write some things down, or honestly, just like do some body regulation because this stuff can be pretty intense. And so if I find myself getting really worked up, I'm probably going to model that just because this stuff can be really intense. So I'd love to start by kind of talking a little bit about American wounds with money. All right, now I'm going to focus primarily on America because it's what I know the most, and acknowledging that other countries and other parts of the world and other cultures, even within America, have different value systems around money than what the typical American psyche has. And so we're going to work with like the major overarching themes today. Which is how I worked in and created all of these kind of money models and archetypes. So this is the Ego Project, right? Money and ego, they play together real nice, don't they? I think one thing to understand is that in this country, money is kind of the most important thing, right? There's so many opportunities to create better lives for ourselves that we say, oh, that's too expensive For instance, universalized healthcare. Oh, that's too expensive. Or ending homelessness. Oh, that's too expensive. And so we're putting money in a hierarchy, right? And because we're putting money in a hierarchy and working within, I'm going to say a caste system to some degree, right? We're putting ourselves and ranking ourselves with other people constantly, right? And that supremacy mindset is what gets us into a lot of trouble with money. And so, when we start thinking about our first memories of money, Lisa, I know I kind of walked you through some of that the other day. We tend to have this kind of experience where whenever you remember your first time with money and how it made you feel, sometimes we'll already start putting ourselves above and below other people. And that core wound shows up in many different ways. And we're going to be talking about that in a minute. But what it really touches on is, are we worthy? Do I feel worthy? Could I make $300,000 and feel okay about it? Could I make $30,000 and feel okay about it? And we also know that, like, sometimes life just happens and money happens, right? If there's not a direct correlation between working hard and earning and receiving money. Like there isn't, it's not a tit for tat, right? And so these archetypes are designed to play with that kind of chaos and structure at the same time. So a lot of our relationship to money comes down to how good we feel giving and receiving. And of course, that plays into so many other aspects of life. That goes into your business, that goes into your important relationships, that goes into intimacy, how comfortable you are with giving and receiving in any kind of environment. And so for me personally, my goal is to get really good at both. And what I say by really good is, like, I feel in my right path with that. And that's going to look different for everybody, right? So yeah, is it making sense so far?
Oh,
Yeah.
with you
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. And I love that you brought up that hard work does not correlate money, because I think that's one of the biggest fallacies that we have in America, is that if you just work real hard, you can do anything, you can accomplish anything. And if that was true, oh my gosh, I mean, the people I know who work so hard, especially, female and female identified people, would be, oh my goodness, I mean, they would be the wealthiest people in this country.
Oh, sure.
And they're not. There is not that correlation between hard work and the amount of money that you make. Yeah.
So can I ask you something? Because kind of the way I think about it, and I've talked about it before, is like money as a standalone is really this neutral kind of concept, right? It's our experiences, it's our, like you said, caste system, the trauma behind it that ends up having the power or the lack of power with it.
Yeah.
Is
No.
kind of what you're saying. Okay.
No, I love that you brought that up too, because truly money itself, its function is to build trust in a stranger. Essentially, if you think about like how we've evolved from trading, bartering, taking care of each other directly, now we can work with a stranger and start to build trust with money. And that alone, like as a tool, is a neutral thing. Like you said, we just kind of put a lot of our own framework, our own mindset, our own experiences onto what we think money is. And when we change that a little bit, things can really improve our lives in like I said, in a variety of ways: work, intimate relationships, all that good stuff. So
okay, perfect. Love it.
Yeah. Shall we get into some money models and kind of get into the juicy stuff?
I think we should. I'm really excited for people to understand that you've created a quiz where people can also learn their archetypes. So that will be in our description. So a lot of what you're going to be talking about is what people will get through the quiz, correct?
Correct. And it's free.
And it's free.
For a person who does a lot of money stuff, having some free stuff is nice.
It is nice. Giving, receiving, giving, receiving.
There you go. I
Okay.
love being generous. I think it feels really good to me. So, all right, I'm going to go through these relatively quickly. The thing that is important to remember when we're working with these money models and archetypes is that each of them exists on a spectrum. There's an unsustainable side and a more sustainable side. All right. And what I mean by that is if you're in, and you, I imagine in this podcast, you use a lot of like words like the shadow side, right?
Mhm.
Okay. So if you're on the shadow side of each archetype, you are not going to feel very good about money. You're probably not going to be making very much. And you might have some judgments or resentment for people who have it. And so that's also going to keep you from making more money because you're not connecting with the people who have it, right?
Mhm.
And I don't mean necessarily just billionaires. I'm talking about your neighbor.
Right,
Right?
right,
Yeah.
yeah.
They might
Yeah.
have $20 to help you get some soup when you're
Yeah.
sick, you know?
Mhm.
And there's probably a lot of shame
Oh,
involved. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
well,
Yeah.
that's how we stay in those shadow sides, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, the whole point of the ego project, as I understand it, is to really engage with the whole self. And the point of this, of the spectrums that we're working with these archetypes, is to really expose two seemingly opposite concepts in the
Mhm.
same spectrum and make them whole. And so when we play with our relationship to money, we get to move up and down that spectrum on each archetype that shows up for us, right? And it's just about, again, finding the right way that works for you. Because I don't have a prescribed, oh, you should have this archetype and that archetype.
Right,
I
right.
don't know your life like that.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
but
And maybe just acknowledging that, either side of the spectrum is neither good nor bad. There's just wisdom to gain from going to that place and understanding it so that you can move to a little bit more equilibrium, I guess, is probably where we want to be.
absolutely, yeah. And one of the archetypes that we're going to talk about is the dominator. And I think when you take the dominator to one side too far, that's where we get really extractive capitalism, right? So
Yeah.
it's, yeah, you nailed it. All right, so jumping in, I'm going to start with the champion. Um, this is a really common American archetype. You just work, 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 work. And if you don't know where you're going, you're just going to spin, 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 and not
Yes,
necessarily.
you do.
I think this might resonate maybe.
Yeah.
Can I share some of your information?
Please. Yeah.
Okay, so these two took the quiz before we got started today, and there's some funny things because they have the same top three in different order, and one of them was the champion, right? And so this is particularly fun for you, and a really powerful archetype to work with because when it is directed properly, and I mean in whatever meaningful way that means to you, this is the powerhouse that makes it happen. This is the part that can like say, you know what? I'm not crazy about doing my taxes, but I do want to save some money. So I'm going to sit and I'm going to do it. I'm going to light some candles. I'm going to get some tea. Like I want to make it happen, which is a beautiful energy to work with. And in its unsustainable form, if it's not learning to rest and do those things like make tea, then you're going to be overworking yourself and not necessarily getting the payback that you want, right? So there's the champion, and next we have the attuned, which is also pretty top on the both of your orders, right? The attuned is a fun archetype to work with because these people really understand, like, where the gaps in society are for money. You can see them, you can kind of sense them, being like, ooh, you know what? That person might need a little more attention, or like, that person probably doesn't need as much attention, but I can't make them do anything, right? And so there's this kind of feeling of kind of annoyed helplessness that can sometimes pop up with this one because you see it and you don't feel like you can do anything. But here's the deal. On the sustainable side, you know that you are part of that web too. So the unsustainable piece is the attuned not seeing themselves within the web and the flow of money. On the sustainable side, you're seeing more of yourself in it and saying, oh gosh, you know what? Maybe there is something I can do because I also want to be a part of that. So maybe the strategy is, you know what? I'm going to talk to people I know and ask them for money and then ask them to trust me to give it away or redistribute it in a way that I think makes sense. You never know, right? If you've never tried it, try it. It is a wild experience.
Right.
Oh, I see you.
Yeah. Wow, I never even thought about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I think that's just goes to show that like there are people benefiting a lot from us not examining our relationship to money.
Oh, oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Right?
For sure.
All right. Third one we got is the manifester. This is another one y'all scored pretty high on. I love the energy of this archetype. This is like when it's paired well with a champion energy is like gorgeous. Okay. Because the manifester really truly understands that that which is for them cannot miss them. There is a trust that things that are the money that is coming to them is for them to make decisions with. They trust that it can come out of nowhere because we've seen it happen. Like people are born into money all the time. Did they do anything for it? No, and that's not a problem,
Yeah.
right? Like it's
We may
okay.
have some feelings about it, but
Yeah, but that's
Yeah.
just the way that they were born, you know?
Right,
And
right.
so like that
Mhm.
energy is there. And to play with it and to say like, okay, what's in my alignment? Where can I trust? Where can I really kind of like open myself to not pushing things with money, but to like really just like open and see what happens. Now, the problem with this one is if you are just in your head and kind of doing some bypassing with it, it's really easy to be like, yeah, just manifest all the money and it'll come to you. This is why I don't like these programs who are just like, yeah, just manifest it. It's fine.
Yeah.
There's more to it than that, right? Because
Mhm.
that energy alone isn't grounded in reality, and money is a very real thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so then pairing this one with another archetype intentionally can be really powerful. So like I said, pairing it with that champion or pairing it with that attuned energy can be really, really lovely. All right. And then we're going to go into the exiled. This one is an interesting one because these people, and it's going to sound a little similar to another archetype I have, but this one in particular, these people have been kept out, purposely kept out of understanding how money works. They don't understand the systems and they don't have enough money to learn how to work within them. And so when we're talking about oppression, the exiled is right up there as far as archetypes go because it's we get stuck in these mindsets that make us think like, oh, well, we're never going to fit in there, so we're going to fit outside of it, which is very, and I'm going to say this word intentionally, valuable, because people have learned how to exist outside of these systems and make a life for themselves and find some kind of joy in life, right? And there's a limitation to what they can access in that outside space. And so learning how to trust someone with money to teach them and to help them navigate what it looks like. That could be a YouTuber, it could be somebody on TikTok, it could be your neighbor, it could be a financial advisor. Like walk into a financial advisor's office and say, I don't know anything about money. Who's got some time to teach me? You know?
Yeah.
That's a pretty extreme behavior, but it works. You know, like
Let me ask you a quick question, and people
Yeah.
can also work with Candis Fox. Just make sure we point that out. Yeah.
Please do. I
Very
love it.
valuable. So does the exile chooses to step out, or are they forced out?
They're usually forced out.
Okay,
Or
so
never had
it's
a chance to.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
okay. Okay.
But in that sense, again, there is literal value in that because when we're thinking, especially when you pair it with the attuned, right? So if you can find somebody who's got a high attuned archetype and say, hey, you know, I've got this exiled archetype. I know how to pluck those gaps. I know you can see them. I know how to fill them. And then you work with somebody who's got the skills and the know-how. And guess what? We're solving problems like nobody's business, right?
That's where innovation comes in.
It's
Great.
gorgeous.
Okay.
Yeah. Love it. All right. And now we're going to go into the wounded, which was my biggest archetype. Oh, yeah. We're so familiar with suffering with money that nothing else seems possible.
No.
And money was used against me. Money never seemed like something I would have. There's like a legitimate oppression that comes with it, but it also is an internalized oppression. And that's a hard thing for me to talk about because, you know, I was a teacher for like 13 years. And in that culture, you know, we're just taught to just suck it up and be like, well, yeah, just do all the things and you'll get paid this small amount of money and it's never enough. And you're expected to like still pay for your kids, you know, pencils and things. And it's painful. But what's great about the wounded is there's this, when the wounded learns self-worth, when the wounded learns um, how to engage responsibly, uh, and just like take responsibility for our lives and our financial situation, we have a really, really strong opportunity not only to heal ourselves in our relationship to money, but to help heal other people in our relationship to money. Why do you think I do this stuff? Because I had a high wounded, and I became a bit of a wounded healer in that aspect, right? And so it's a really painful place to be, and I think one that a lot of people will recognize and resonate with, um, because this is what we're taught in the caste system. You'll never get there. Just suck it up, accept the minimum wage. That's it, right?
And also accept maybe a small step up, and that should be considered a win. And that then if you want more than that, well, you've got that, what are you wanting now?
This
Are
is a
you
high
greedy?
shame, high
Right,
shame
right.
scenario.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a
And thank
lot of
you.
shame.
Thank you for sharing that, because I think a lot of people would think, oh, I'm wounded. I'm always going to be wounded. And you've healed that wound. And now you are thriving and sharing your knowledge. So there is definitely an open door for people with this. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I think I'm going to give you another freebie. One of the best ways to work with this archetype and to heal that wound is to take responsibility. No guilt, no shame, no blame allowed. Just try to take responsibility for it, even if it's like, yeah, well, I was born to a poor family. I'm responsible for that. That's the life I was given.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be negative or victim blaming. It's just I can take responsibility for this. What can I take responsibility for next?
Kind of
Right.
using that like radical acceptance of, like rather than dwelling in the aversion of like, I can't change this and I can't change that, but just there's beauty and power in accepting and taking responsibility. And it's in that moment that you can start seeing solutions or taking steps forward. So yeah, I appreciate you tying that to your own experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you said people are born, of course, into poverty, and then generational poverty they've been born into. And I think people, our country says that a lot. Well, it's generational poverty, but I don't think people recognize that people can't heal a wound if they don't know what the wound is.
Right. And you can't really heal in the environment that keeps hurting you. Right.
Mm.
And so that therein lies the biggest thing, the biggest conundrum in my work is that, of course, can we heal your relationship to money? Can you feel strong in your relationship to money? Yes. Are you still going to feel like hopeless sometimes, or that these systems are not helping you? Yes. And part of the way that we can heal those systems is to heal ourselves. So and they both inform each other, right? And I think it's really important to say that, because I think there's a lot of emphasis right now on just healing yourself and getting better for yourself, and that's great, but there's actual systems at work here that are getting in the way of that healing. And so you can't heal in the environment that you were hurting in, and that generational poverty thing is real. And this is again why it's so important to examine your relationship to money, because you inherited an idea of money from somebody else, right? And is that a legacy you really want to carry on?
Right.
Does it serve you? Does it serve your kids, your community? I don't have any kids, so I have community. Like who is that mindset serving, and how can we work with it? Yeah. All right. The dominator. Oh, this was my cringe point. So if you work with me or go through my workbook or kind of work on this process, there's this point called the cringe, and it is juicy. Essentially, you're going to find the archetype that just grosses you out, and you're like, I hate it. I don't want anything to do with it. For me, it was the dominator, because if you can imagine being the wounded, understanding how much all of these systems were affecting me, the dominator, like I said, is that energy that when it's taken to an extreme is extractive capitalism. And so for me, I was like, I don't want it. And so, but in learning how to love the dominator, I unlocked a lot for myself and a lot of healing. And that's that, again, this kind of almost tantric way of looking at the world, where these two seemingly opposite things are coming together to heal and be whole, right? So dominators at their worst only trust themselves with money. They're very secretive. They will work deals and not tell anybody how they're working out. They will, like they can be incredibly selfish and, I mean, extractive capitalism to a T, right?
Mm-hmm.
And on its more sustainable side is very protective and loving, but it requires consent and
Mm,
transparency. And
mm,
without those pieces, it becomes manipulative, right?
yeah.
Do
But
you see a lot of dominators in maybe codependent relationships
yes.
where you have one partner who kind of has their hands on the money and one partner who is completely submissive?
hmm
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, a lot of times I'll see a common pairing is like a dominator and a devotee, which we'll get to in a minute, or a dominator and detached. So
Mm,
you've got somebody who's like, they're both trying to manipulate each other with money,
mhm,
or just in different factions, or you've got somebody who just wants nothing to do with money, and then somebody who's like, okay, I will take care of everything. And
right.
I think in the common American paradigm, we have accepted that men take the role of dominator and that women will take the role of the detached and just kind of say, yeah, you take care of it. This is your job. But you
Mhm,
know what? Not all guys are suited for this stuff. And like some of them don't want it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Who knew?
Yeah. Well, and also it implies that I think you get almost like a parent-child relationship in that dynamic
Sure.
where, and relationships end, partners pass away, there's things that occur and one person who maybe is detached, they're at a loss, they are in trouble. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen it happen a few times. I like to partner with financial advisors and like real estate agents and people who work with money because there's often that dynamic and that person, like you said, if their partner is the dominator type and they die, what happens? Now they have to live a whole different way of like it's a completely different way of living now that they have to do, or they're not going to be able to sustain themselves in a culture. And so it's a hard shift and can be very painful. That having been said, I think we're all familiar in some degree with kink relationships, and I'm gonna talk about this for a minute just because I did name this as dominator for a reason. There are some when you are in a consensual power dynamic with money, it can feel very good to be cared for. And I'm not saying that this needs to be the only way that you do it. And it's not like it's not going to work for everybody, but it can feel really good. So I'm just reiterating that even though I had a lot of trouble with this archetype, I love it. I think it's really beautiful. So
So if you take this quiz, say with a partner,
mhm.
and your partner turns out to be a dominator, don't freak out.
Yeah, don't freak out.
Right.
It could
Yeah.
be a really good thing. And it might be
Okay.
something that you're actually attracted to in that person, but maybe haven't had the words for yet. Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think the key was that in its healthy version, there's that transparency, there's that care, consent, right?
Yeah.
So it's not being, just ambivalent about anything. It's really coming and communicating about it, but still taking a lot of the responsibility.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And knowing when to let it go, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's part of the
Yeah,
container.
for sure. Yeah. That's probably the part of the healing work of the dominator is
Yes.
the releasing or giving, maybe.
Mhm.
Okay.
Absolutely. Moving to the creative, I work with a lot of people, especially in the spiritual community, who just say like money doesn't matter. I'm just going to focus on developing my craft or focus on my spirituality. And they go and disentangle themselves from the financial world and then maybe have a health issue and need to go to the doctor. Or, like there's these practical real life problems that happen as we age and live in community with people and even in nature. And it's going to be a really hard transition for those people. And so in its most unsustainable way, there's a lot of bypassing, there's a lot of pushing away. And guess what? Like, you want to make money as an artist, you got to work with this type, like,
Yeah.
we can't just, like, part of it is our social conditioning. We can't just let artists starve. That's not okay, you know?
Right. Right. Yeah.
And also, like, if you're actively rejecting money, how is somebody going to be like, oh, can I please just give you $50 for that piece of art? Is it worth more than that? Maybe, yeah. But if you're saying no, like, I just want to make my art, you're going to have a hard time sustaining yourself. The beautiful side of it, though, is that this is a really authentic way to connect with money. When you can heal this one, it feels really good because you're not losing your integrity. You're not perpetuating any harm. You're just putting yourself out there and being authentic and seeing how good it feels to just be you. And that is very powerful.
Well, we live in a culture that consumes art daily and by the minute, it's the television, movies, books. I mean, they're literally consuming it and not giving in return. So it is a very one-sided. So as an artist, I'm a writer, so I recognize that the struggle within that archetype, definitely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you're touching on that systemic issue too, right? Which I appreciate. Moving to the gambler. This is one that makes people really nervous, but I love this energy. In doses. If this is your main archetype, this could be, you might live a very chaotic life, right? A lot of the gambler loves the rush of ins and outs. So giving and receiving in high volume. The beauty of it is that they know that there is a lot of money out there that they can touch. They know it. And so when you're like using this energy, for instance, if we were doing a brainstorm with like a company or something, and they're like, okay, we're all going to put on a different hat from each archetype, and we're just going to play with it and see what kind of funding options we come up with. Guess what? The gambler is going to be the one that's like, you know what? Let's reach out to that billionaire. Let's just write him an email and see what happens. And sometimes it works. You never know. So that kind of pie in the sky energy can be the thing that really vaults you to another way of living. And also got to keep it in check with another archetype because it can get out of balance pretty easily and become like, okay, well, you just got all that money and then you blow it on. Okay, I'm thinking some things that I would really want. I'm going to think of something ridiculous. A pet giraffe, maybe? Maybe that's your thing. Maybe that's something you've been working toward your whole life. I don't really know. But as an example, you can see how that wouldn't work for most people, right?
Right.
I have to say, we know my cringe, and we'll talk about that in a minute.
Oh, yeah.
I have to say, I had a little bit of a physical reaction to the gambler there as you were describing that. I did not care for that at all, Candis. I did not like that feel. Yeah. So, yeah, there's something for us to maybe touch upon there. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and I find too that like a lot of people who have the kind of cringe around that one have had somebody in their life that they felt was really irresponsible with money and it hurt them.
Ding, ding, ding.
Uh-oh.
Ow, you're good. Yeah.
Well, on that note, we're going to get to your cringe point, Lisa.
Oh.
We have the devotee. This energy says, I already gave you everything. You owe me.
I'm owning it.
Yeah, it's a tough one. It's a tough one to work with. This is also one that I grew up with, and so it can be a very painful one because you always feel like there's these secret contracts that you don't know you're even involved in, and all of a sudden this person's demanding right now when they want it to get all that money back. And it can be really painful. It can be very manipulative. These people, when they're overgiving and constantly overgiving, because that's their strategy, they're just like, I'm gonna overgive to everybody and they're all gonna pay me back when I want them. Guess what? It doesn't work that way. And it's really painful for them when it doesn't work. And they're like, oh, well, I just got to do it more, obviously.
If this doesn't work, then more of it should.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting because when you're in it, you don't think that's what you're doing. No. Right, as a devotee, right? And also, to me, all relationships, if I'm engaged in them, are reciprocity. To me, is relationship 101. If you're going to engage with people, it has to be reciprocal. And I recognize now, not everyone thinks that way. People are like, oh, you're going to give me? Thanks, I'll keep taking. Hungry ghost, right? Gobble, gobble, right? I'm gonna take, right? And they'll just keep taking it. And then you're like, well, now I'm in need. And they're literal ghosts, right? They're gone. They're like, I never promised you I would help you.
Yep.
I'd be there for you, So it's more subtle. It's not quite that black, like, I'm going to give you now, here's a cookie, give me a cookie back. It's not like that. It's kind of like, it comes from a good place of giving,
Mhm. Well,
I
yeah, and I
believe.
think this
Yeah. Not trying
archetype.
to defend it, but yeah. No.
No, well, I think you're touching on what's beautiful about this archetype, actually. And the more sustainable side is giving from a place of love. This is one of the more loving archetypes in the sense that, like, are they capable of becoming really regenerative, not just like creating reciprocity, but actual regenerative transactional relationships. And so there's a lot of love behind the devotee. There's a lot of knowing that, like, if they invest in others, it will come back, right? It just might not be in their controlled version of it, right? And so uh, this one really fears like not being seen as a good person. There's a lot of manipulation that goes into that, and but when a devotee can share their desires openly and be honest with their desires, that transparency, that consent piece becomes, and this is why, again, like, you see the dominator and the devotee together sometimes because they're both being manipulative of each other, but they're somehow okay with the non-consensual practices, and they just kind of get used to each other. And so, is it healthy or not? I don't really know. It's just maybe not so sustainable in terms of bringing in money, right?
Well,
Or
and
even letting it go.
yeah, and we want to make sure that the listeners understand. So your cringe isn't in your lead. It's not in your top 3, as an example. It's the one that when you read through all of the archetypes make you uncomfortable, right? And so for me,
Physically uncomfortable.
and when I read that, I was like, oh, I don't like that. And I recognized that I didn't like it because I've done it.
Yep.
I've given and given and given and given and given and given and given, right? And not gotten back a reciprocal relation. And and it made me so uncomfortable seeing that because I'm like, yeah, I don't like it. Why does that happen? Right. So there was something there for me to learn.
Yeah.
And to understand.
What you touched on, so this is why the cringe works, right? Because oftentimes the one that makes us the most uncomfortable is what we're doing, and we're judging ourselves for it. Or we have done it and we don't like it about ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's where the real shadow can then become part of the whole in the forefront, right?
So kind of like the part of us that we're suppressing or repressing, but is present.
And just like ego wounds, money wounds, like you said, they pair very nicely together. Because if we're doing this in our relationships, we're probably doing it in our relationship to money, where I need. And the more you chase something, the faster it runs.
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think too, one of our biggest wounds around money comes back to love, our relationship to love, how we give and receive love. Money is a skewed manifestation of that. And so are we wanting to receive love as a devotee because we're giving love? Absolutely. And we should get it. Absolutely. And we can't always control what that looks like without being, like, we need to be transparent, right?
Yeah.
And then trust, which is a hard thing to do.
Right. And or are we an environment that supports us in our healthy relationship of being the devotee, right? So
yep, exactly. And I see a lot of the devotee energy in nonprofits, actually. Well, there's this pattern where I don't want to get into it too much, but like they'll give, expect to receive it. They end up becoming the executive officer at some point, and then all they know how to do is be secretive about money, and then the whole thing tanks.
Yeah,
happens all the time.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So last archetype is the detached. This is the easiest one to explain because they just don't trust themselves. They're avoidant with money. They're maybe sometimes intentionally financially ignorant. And they don't know how to invest in themselves, like, at all. Like, these are people who are going to wear a t-shirt for 30 years and be like, this is fine. When they might be able to afford a few more t-shirts, right? But what I love about this archetype is the moment that they start engaging with their relationship to money, they could become any of them.
Mm.
Any of them, any of the other ones. And it's so cool. I love working with this archetype. I love working with people who are avoidant with money, who are afraid to make mistakes with it, and they just kind of take on that guilt and that shame. And I love when they start to like really see who they actually are with money and feel good about it, because like the whole world opens up to them all of a sudden, and like all the possibilities are just poof going off in their heads, and like they're just, yeah, it's one of my favorite parts. So I could talk about that all day.
Yeah, almost like the maturing into self.
Yeah,
Concept and relationship with money. That is really cool. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then, so everyone has some of these in them, even like 1% of one of them, right?
I mean, some of them get 0%. They're all like, I have them all on the quiz so that you can learn about them for free. So for instance, if you're taking it with a partner and your partner takes it and they'd want to learn more about each other's without having to look at their actual thing, it's all available for you. But it's, I like to think that typically speaking, it's your top 3 that are driving the train, right? Or your car, like who's the one reading directions. So for instance, Lisa, your champion is driving the car. You're just driving all day long. Go, go, go. And your attuned is saying like, maybe, look, there's a rest area. Are we going to stop?
No,
No.
we won't.
And then your manifestor is like, I've got the roadmap. We could go all the way over here, or over there, or over here, or over there. And your driver's like, where are we going? And your attune just wants to take a bathroom break. Like, it's just.
Wow, I feel very seen right now, Candis.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Wow, yeah, that's it. I mean, it's exhausting. It's exhausting. I have no other words. I'm tired. Yeah.
Well, and what I love about this, and thank you for the opportunity to be on this show, because not only to just kind of get to talk about it, but because I get to connect with you, and maybe you won't have to be so tired anymore. You know, like that's really this is why I do this, because we just live better lives when we're conscious about our relationship to giving and receiving.
Yeah.
Beautifully put. Yeah. And let's do Cristine now.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, similarly, like since you have the same top 3, it's more just like your manifestor is saying, we're sticking to this map, but I don't know where we're going. We could go all of these 3 places with money, and we could invest here. We could get money from here. We could like do all these things. And your attune says, okay, well, that's all nice and good, but like, what about all these people we're neglecting? And then there might be some guilt around that. And then we're getting into the manifest, or I'm sorry, the champion that says, listen, do you want me to drive? Do you want me to step in and try this? Like where are we actually going? Because I'll do it. I just don't know. I don't know where we're going yet. And so is that kind of making sense?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So all of these conversations are happening in our hearts and in our heads when we're thinking about money. We're thinking about how to build a business. Like, okay, where do we need to put our marketing strategy? Right. Like this is all very practical, real world stuff, but in the framework of archetypical thinking. Right.
I love that we have Cristine and I here to do this, because I think there's a lot of couples or business partners or great friends, right, that will look at this, roommates, because if you have, people who are sharing a space, and one person is like, I want to paint every room, and, and one's like, well, we're not making rent this month, let's reel this in a little bit, and, being able to work with the energy to say, okay, I know what I do that's sustainable, and I'm seeing what I'm doing that's unsustainable. Let's talk about our leads, right? Let's have this conversation so that we can get this ship moving in the right direction. It's like having 2 people in a rowboat, and and one's rowing one way and one's rowing the other, and you're just doing circles, right?
Well, that is kind of what, I mean, if we're looking at archetypical energy between the two of you, that is kind of what might be happening, right? So I don't know anything about your actual financial stuff. I don't know anything about, all I know is that I've been invited on this podcast. Y'all are lovely people. I really respect your mission and that you shared your archetypes with me. So, but what it might feel like is that you are just kind of spinning in circles and you're not making the progress that you want. Like you might be getting somewhere, but it's taken a lot of energy and you want it to be more efficient and you want it to feel better. And so then it's a matter of like, okay, can we let the champion just like rest and only go when we tell it to? Can we get the manifester to give us a roadmap and then let the attuned pick one? Just one at first, and then say, champion, go.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so then that's like engaging the more positive and like helpful, sustainable aspects of those three archetypes.
Which I love because both of us have those top three, right? But
They're powerful.
how our, one that each of us has one that leads a little bit differently. So, being the manifestor, I do kind of say, I am kind of like, well, we could do this and money comes to us easily and freely. And,
It's true. It can.
And Lisa's like, I'm ready. Let's do, but I think using that attuned of both of us to really allow ourselves to sink in a little bit deeper before we take action. Right.
And that's going to keep you in your integrity. Right.
Yeah.
Truly.
Yeah.
And I like that we both have the attuned, so we can tap into that. Now, I noticed on my results, there were some, and I can't recall which ones they were, that were like exactly the same percentage or one all, like it was very close.
Yeah.
So what does that mean?
Your manifestor and your, looking at it real quick. Your manifestor and the attuned are the same percentage. And so what that could mean is that in terms of decision making, it could be confusing, that you might want to switch between one or the other, and kind of get lost a little bit. But ultimately that they're both equally strong in you. So you get to, when you're conscious with your relationship to money, when you're making conscious, powerful choices, you have the power of both of them behind you equally. So you get to be like, okay, I'm the master and commander of all of these things, and I'm going to employ this one here, and it's going to work.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah. No, and I think that resonates just in throughout my life, right? Like where, in some areas I'm stronger in being able to allow the manifestor and the attuned to have their hierarchy, right? And then in other things that may be newer and stuff, I'm still trying to hear and listen to it, and understand which one needs to take that center stage and lead for a little while. Yeah.
It's a big practice in discernment, and especially when you're getting into new ventures. This is why we have career coaches and business consultants and things like that, because these people have played with all of this already and have some opportunity to kind of guide where they can, but and to make it a little more efficient for you.
Well, and I think that makes so much sense, is like your archetype can even somewhat fluctuate based upon the environment that you're stepping into, right? So
Exactly.
think about like myself in the practice that's been, I now have the history there. The manifestor is definitely, the one that leads there, but like we said earlier, other ventures, it may be the attune that needs to lead for a little while. So
exactly. And you might find too, I mean, this almost always happens, after I get done working with somebody, they have a different lineup. Almost always.
It makes
And
sense.
it's
Healing has been occurring, right?
right. Because like when you first take it, like there's a lot of truth. Like I designed it to be a little subconscious in that sense, which is tricky. Like how do you design a quiz to be subconscious? But
I know I saw it and I was like, oh, they're doing something here.
I did too. I like channeled that one. Channeled that one. Yeah.
But it's the cringe that helps us see what our actual archetypes are. And not that you are necessarily always going to be a devotee, but it's a point where if you learn to accept that part of yourself, you might become something else.
Yeah. Awesome.
Well, and I love that. I love that it's fluid, because that's like Cristine said, healing has occurred. right? So now we can shift and see, okay, maybe in this environment, maybe with, I'm very open talking about my finances with my partner, but when it comes to, my family, I tend to wall them out about my struggles because I'm trying to put on a show or because that's the dynamic we've created, right? And learning how to open up in a different way and, learning how to be discerning with my giving, which is the work that I'm doing right now of like, I wish you well, but I don't have the energy to be giving without, anything returning to me. My tank is empty.
Yeah.
Literally, physically and car, right? That type of thing, right?
Yeah, right.
And we're talking here about money, but there's energy in money.
Yes.
And that's what I know we're all three feeling the energy of it here. Can you talk a little bit about money and energy?
Yeah. So, energy, as we all know, is not something that can be fully controlled, but can be flowing, right? We all have energy flowing in and out of our bodies all the time. Whether that be physical food or whether we're like spending time with somebody that gives us energy or takes energy, we feel, our feelings are our gauge for our giving and receiving, right? In energy, right? And so money itself just ends up being kind of a manifestation of our feelings and energy around giving and receiving. So, and this is what I mean, like this is some deep subconscious stuff. It's not, and it's a whole body experience, which is why when you do the cringe, like you got to pay attention to what your body's doing. Because we feel that energy in us all the time. And those energies become judgments sometimes. They become discernment sometimes. They become an opening sometimes, right? And the more that we can kind of play with that energy, and I do mean play, because like that's a big component of what I like to do. I love playing with people. I love laughing. I love making these really hard things into something that we can just play with, like I might give you some homework to try out, but if you don't like it, fine. We'll try something else, like we're going to find something that feels good. It's going to be in that place where like we're touching on what's safe enough and still expansive, right? And so just to build that trust, that's how we build trust, right? So trust is a manifestation of that energy that we feel. And you can talk about that in terms of spirituality too, if you want, like, you guys have pretty high manifestor energy. So do you trust that money can just come to you?
Yes.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And I do think that the playfulness, because that does go back to that ego developmental stage of play, right? Like we played to see what patterns resonated with us, right? And how we learned about ourselves and how we learned about others. And that is so much of what money can be too, right? Like it can be something that we try different things with and see what resonates and what feels right for us.
Exactly. And it can be really fun to just play with.
Yeah. Well, and I love that we're introducing these ideas into the vernacular, because first we have to have an understanding of what the words mean, and then we can play with it. Because when you said that right there, like, do you trust? Christine was like, yes.
Yeah, I saw it. It was your whole body. You had a whole body yes.
Seriously, and it was beautiful to see that. And my thought was, if I work hard enough,
yeah.
I recognize it. I see it. And I don't think it, and when I thought it before, it made perfect sense. And now I'm like, this does not make any sense the way I've been doing this. And, I need to take a look at this and see where that wounding is, and healing. And I have to be honest, with my top three, I don't think it's going to be a huge leap into the healing, because as long as I have an understanding of how to use these tools, and when I'm in an unsustainable energy, I can now recognize it and move myself out of it.
Totally.
Yeah. Well, even recognizing that word trust, gave you, I mean, even just a
Oh,
locked
you kind of shrunk back a little bit, got a little small, a little tight, That's what I mean. Like, it can make sense to our minds, but it doesn't make sense to our bodies.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
it.
Oh,
It just doesn't feel
so
good.
good.
Mhm.
Candice, this is brilliant. I love this. And we
Yeah.
really want to have you back and talk deeper into some of this. And especially when we hear from our guests, we're going to be doing some Q&As. I know they're going to have some questions.
Love it.
So we're going to ask, what is the first step? Someone who is wanting to heal, their financial health is in trouble or needs improved. And what is the first step that they can take?
All right, this is free. You can do it for yourself. You don't have to talk to me. You don't even have to take my quiz. Take a look at your first memory of money. Just remember what it is. Your first memory of money and note how you felt about it. How did it make you feel when you remember your first memory of money? And take a look at that pattern and see if it repeats itself. Because
And I'm not going to share what mine was, but I'm going to tell you, it shocked me. I'm not going to tell, it's private. But when I realized what it was, it blew my mind. I was like, oh my gosh, that was the origin of some of my wounding around money. So it works.
Well, I'm going to challenge you real quick too. On the word wounding. That was your conditioning.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Oh, that's good. Yeah. Thank you.
That was your conditioning.
Yeah.
Just, we came by it honestly. Nobody was trying to hurt you. Probably. Maybe. Maybe people were just trying to take care of themselves or didn't know how to communicate what was going on. And also, how is your, whoever's caring for you going to know when it's your first memory of money? Right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Thank
But
you. I
that was
like
your
that conditioning. Yeah. No, that's good. That's better. Yeah. Because wounding, gives that feeling of, I'm going to really have to attend to this, which we need to, but it's also, it's a small T trauma, if you will. Yeah. Yeah.
There's something wrong or broken or
Right. Yeah. So what were you going to say, Cristine?
Oh, I was just going to say that, like, I like that use of conditioning. And again, like in those moments, we were the receiver of somebody else's conditioning, right? Probably our family of origin and their understanding of money. And so, we hold space and have compassion, yet we take responsibility. Like you said, locking it down in here.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's important too to recognize that like whoever was raising us, like what they learned about money might have actually worked for them. But now is a totally different time.
Right. Exactly.
Oh, that's a very good point. Yeah. I think there is that feeling of like, well, their conditioning was bad. And it's like, no, where our country was at that time, they were probably thriving.
And they were thinking, if you do it just like me, if you believe just like me.
Yeah.
Oh, that's such a good point. And, a lot of times our money models are male, are active. And if we're females, we're in a different role in the family. I mean, so many different things come into play. That's a very good point. Yeah. Okay. Well, Candice, definitely people check out the quiz. You're not going to have any regrets about doing so. Take a look at it. And Candice is available for clients as well. Can you tell us a little bit about what you offer, Candice?
Right.
Yeah. So I do private one-on-one coaching for those who want, the more exclusive experience, who might especially have some maybe shame around it. I want to respect that shame. So, and we'll get to play with it. And I also do, I do a lot of like leadership coaching around money. So for instance, if you've got a business and you want to make more money, more ethical money, more sustainable money, I'm a good person to reach out to for that because I can work with your team and kind of help you see what the dynamics are and where they could maybe be played with a little bit differently and bring in some extra flow and also where you can invest, right? So if you like that idea, reach out. I like to do workshops every now and then. Those are a little bit more of a discounted thing. And so I do workshops when I have the capacity to be more generous because I want more people to just get in and try it out. And what I love about the workshops is there's no space for shame. So if you want a good challenge and you want to see, because like you're going to see everybody else's money stuff in a workshop. And so you're like, oh, maybe I'm not weird. Maybe I, maybe there's nothing wrong with me. Maybe, like you get to see everybody else's stuff and share your own and know that like, it's okay. It's a really lovely environment. So I do workshops, leadership training, especially for businesses, career coaching, and the private exclusive money coaching.
Yeah. That's awesome.
All of Candis's information will be in the description. And you can reach out and connect with her, at your leisure, but I would do it now.
Yeah.
I'm thinking Candis is going to get real busy soon.
Yeah.
It's an election year, y'all. Like, let's clean this up.
Everybody is losing their mind and money, and everybody needs a little support right now.
Thanks so much.
Do you have any last questions for Candis, Cristine?
No, I think this has been just such a great conversation, and being a woman here in the South where, grew up saying, don't talk about money. I love that you're wanting to talk about money from a place that's, open and honest and playful, and there's no judgment or shame around it. We all are available to have a relationship with money that feels good to us, and we don't have to be afraid to talk about it.
Yes.
So good. All right, everyone. Make sure to like and subscribe. Check out Candis's offerings, and we will see you next time. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.